Welcome to your mind. What you see outside of you is also inside of you. What is inside is also outside. The inside shapes the outside, and the outside shapes the inside. You must learn to control what is. When this video was recorded, it was now. When you watch this recording, it will also be now. That is because now is the only time that is real. All points in time and space are connected and one at the same time. This is not a video. It is a window in space-time. Use it to feel the energy of the shrine behind him. You can do this when you understand that there is no true separation, as everything is mind. So if you are ready, let us begin.
Everybody's Chris and Lumen here, and we're going to shift tacks here for a minute. It's been kind of interesting. Could keep talking about the same old story, but sometimes the story is the thing we got to get around. There's a lot of things that you find in this path and on this channel that keep coming back to you over and over again. She'll show you something, and then you'll kind of like see it a little bit, and then you'll lose it, and eventually you'll come back to it again, and you'll come back to it again, and you'll come back to it again. So now we're coming back to something again. Mostly on this channel, we've spent a great deal of time discussing the Divine Feminine. Sophia, Epinoia, Lumen, Divine Mother, all that stuff. But we gotta get some of the masculine side in there too. Because what we're talking about here would be like heart and mind, feeling and thinking. So she's definitely on the feeling side of things, and she's one of the things that people most need. So when we look at like how my path has played out, yeah, I connected to her. Definitely made things better, but then I still struggle with other things. So I asked a question last night to the Father, because now that I've got the Father, you know, integrated, and I've got a new picture that I'm going to make with this thing. It's like 10 times freaking stronger. Everybody that's been over here said that. And I'm like, what can I do with this? I asked something along the lines of like, I forget. But I know part of it was also like, what can I do with this other than it just be like this giant freaking well of energy that I charge things with? Like I gotta see like the other side of the equation. So we've been on the feeling side of the equation. Well, what ended up happening was when we talked about the friend the other day that took the mushrooms, I found this ad popped up, and it was like they had mushroom gummies and mushroom vapes. But here's the thing, it's like it's not really mushrooms, not in the regular sense. But she did draw me to this little mushroom vape, but it has nothing. Forget psilocybin, because this ain't it. What it actually ended up being, once I really looked at the ingredients, was a nootropic blend. So more like mind stimulant stuff rather than psychedelics. And once I kind of figured out, like, okay, just a little bit, now I started to get some new information. Now back in the beginning, like when we first started this, or when I first started this back in like 2011, nootropics were one of the first things she kind of guided me to. Nootropics, if you haven't heard of them, like there's tons of them, different blends, everyone's trying to make them, and every time someone makes one that's too good, you know, the government bans it, of course. But it's kind of like the realistic version of what the movie Limitless is about. So if you watch the movie Limitless, when he first takes the pill and he goes back to his apartment and he's like, this can't be my place, who would live like this? And he cleans it all up and he gets a bunch of work done, and he's starting to become a little bit smarter. Like, that's kind of more realistic. But the first couple times that those things really kicked in for me, like I started seeing a lot of stuff that was, I started seeing things that were more like sacred geometry and that type of stuff. Like the very first time nootropics really kicked in for me, I was like, I understand fifth dimensional reality, until they wore off, and then I didn't anymore. Went back to being a monkey, picking my nose in a cave. But yeah, they can be really, really helpful because the mind is the other half of the equation. It's not just the energy, it's not just the heart, and it's not the feeling, it's the mind. And if we want to understand how to get out of our loops, our cycles, we got to get into that area. So what I kind of saw, the first thing that popped up that I saw when I got up this morning was this image of a Tesseract, four-dimensional cube. And I've, everyone's seen it, but what's it mean? It kind of, what was kind of said was like, this is a good representation of your mind and how it relates to the inner and the outer. And then things started to kind of like piece together. And we come up to things that I've said before, and it's like I say it and then I go right back to it. I say it and I go right back to it because I just get stuck. So if you want to know more, don't go away.
Let 'em say we're crazy. I don't care about that. Put your hand in my hand, baby. Don't ever look back. Let the world around us just fall apart. Baby, we can make it if we're heart to heart. And we can build this dream together. Standing strong forever. Nothing's gonna stop us now. And if this world runs out of lovers, we'll still have each other. Nothing's gonna stop us. Nothing's gonna stop us now.
So it has to do with that whole explanation at the intro of this video, the new one that we made, the inner and the outer. Like that's like one of the biggest clue puzzles that Jesus gives in the Nag Hammadi. It's like when you make the inner like the outer and the outer like the inner and the upper like the lower. It goes on and on and on. Well, when you're looking at a Tesseract cube, what you're seeing is the inner and the outer cubes are kind of like constantly switching places. And what she was saying at the beginning of the video, what is inside of you is outside of you, and what is outside of you shapes what's inside of you. So it's this constant cycle. How we got into this cycle is because we start off life not knowing how any of this stuff works. And it's almost just like you don't know anything, and then the outer world scoops some stuff and puts it in your mouth, and then you see more, and it just keeps this constant cycle going as you're growing up, as you're going through school, until you see the world that they want you to see. And therein lies the problem. Because what occurred to me is like the two big things that they get you with early is the globe. The globe is kind of like a representation of the world. I know this is one of the things that people fight the most about. It's one of the things that people get the most triggered about. It's one of the things that authority can't stop beating on people that think it's not round. Which I say it's not round or flat. It's all digital. It's whatever you think it is. But either which way, they get the reason they absolutely despise the flat earthers, besides the fact that they can be rather annoying, is they're picking at something that they don't want them to pick at. It really has nothing to do with the shape of where you live. They're picking at something that is a foundational symbol of how they built up your mind matrix. Your picture of how the world is starts with, where are you? That's one of the first things they taught you in kindergarten. Where are you? What does it look like? Oh, you can't go anywhere outside of this. It doesn't matter if it's flat or round. Either which way, you can't go past it. So it doesn't matter. People fighting about stuff that doesn't matter. But what's the other big thing that's actually bigger at putting us in a box that is eventually going to blow up in our faces? That's religion. It is religion. The big thing that is so different about religion as apart from like Gnostic stuff is Gnostic stuff looks like the same thing on the surface till you start reading it a bit closer. But it's talking about the quantum consciousness. But what religion does, especially at a young age, is it tells you that you are this insignificant thing and there is a power that is outside of you, that you are helpless to its whims. And then it has all these societal rules it wants you to follow, and it punishes you, and it gets angry with you, and all this stuff. And how would you know any better? It doesn't matter that no one ever proved it to you. It doesn't matter that it's intangible. Fact is, they implanted this idea in your head at a very, very young age. And now everything else from that point forward is built on that foundation. And over the years, I've pointed things out, and I've said, like, look, all these things that God curses people the hardest for in the Bible are things that people feel the most guilt and remorse over. And yet, the people that don't have empathy or religion programming or anything like that, the bad people, they're not getting punished for what they do, right? So it's like, why is it just the good people, quote unquote, that get beat up for things? It's because you and the God they taught you about are one and the same. We're not talking about the Father. Father's bigger than you, but the Father is within you too. We're talking about gods of religion, gods that get angry, gods that have egos. Clearly, we can read the book and like, that's a person with an ego. It's very, very touchy. You can look at the Gnostic story from different angles and come to the same conclusion that I only saw during 2 or 3 of those big epinoia guided mushroom trips. And that is that you and the demiurge are one and the same. It's another part of you. It's shaping, it's giving all the resistance to you. It's like the last big thing that you got to figure out. It's like, that is you. You're fighting you. So you start off simple. You're like, oh, you're dealing with your shadow, as most people call it. And then as you go through the hero's journey, the shadow character gets a little bigger, gets a little bit bigger, and you keep getting past it. But then you end up with, like, there's only one thing left that I feel is in my way, and that is the God of this world. That's part of you too, because everything is part of you. Everything is connected. That God of this world is the child of Sophia, as are you. So all the resistance and things that we keep running into and all the adversity is coming from this part that we have not reconciled yet. When the two make peace with one another within a single house, they shall say, move to the mountain, it will move. This is a thing I've not quite mastered, even though I've seen it multiple times, even though I've grasped it multiple times. You get back into doing life stuff and run into bumps in the road, it gets hard. But everything leads to this. So the inner and the outer. What she said, like what you believe in your mind, the inner, you will see reflected to you in the outer world. And likewise, new things that are introduced to you in the outer world through the collective are going to make an impression on the inner. So the inner shapes the outer, and the outer shapes the inner. Those two cubes are constantly switching places. But we have to get to a point where we control both cubes. But as long as you go through the programming that they were giving you, that there is an outside force that is controlling things, that is causing problems, then we won't figure it out. I know you got to dive pretty deep to get to the point to where everything is real and everything is not real at the same time. But when you follow it with logic and just let go of everything you think you know, stop listening to people outside of you, scientists and authority, like they will always steer you away from this. It's just like the world is what we say it is, and that's it. Doesn't matter that everybody disagrees and sees different things, just ignore that. It's what we say. It's what we say. You're crazy if you think otherwise. It's what we say. But yeah, a couple times during those mushroom trips, like these were like the epinoia trips, or like the 10-gram trips, where I'm like not even freaking here. There was I remember a couple times, like when it was peaking, and peaking on 10 grams is like something. You're literally on multiple dimensions all at once. But it was like looking at your hands and stuff, and it's like realizing like I am all those different names for the demiurge. Like that's me too. I'm doing this to myself. I'm doing this to myself. So there's been a bunch of little tests she's had me do about making peace with that thing and resisting that thing. And it gets better with time. But still, as long as you think that there's another part that's outside of you that you're in conflict with, then there's going to continue to be conflict. Try to wrap your mind around that 4D cube and how the inner world and the outer world are constantly exchanging with one another, constantly reflecting one another, constantly reshaping one another. Because if you actually just think back in your own life, at points when your beliefs radically change, so did the world that you saw, right? Like you didn't see the world the same way when you had some sort of big belief change. And then that's what makes this place so immersive, is like as soon as you change things on the inside and the reflection on the outside starts coming back, then it's like, there's my confirmation. I think people that probably have like the best luck with manifestation and stuff like that are probably people that did not grow up religious. They probably didn't take that path. People that have like the most issues with stuff on the hero's journey is people that have been in magic and stuff like that, because you know, supernatural people, because they believe in like everything. Then you've got demons, you've got angels, you've got fairies, you got this, you got that, you got this, you got these gods and that gods and this thing and that thing. And like as long as you believe all these things are real, it's just like chaos in your mind. You never know what's doing it. But at the end of the day, it's always you. It's your mind. It's your experience. All of the parts are in you. You are all the parts. But the only place you can get any kind of clarity on that is to pray to the Father, which is the big part, the biggest part. And then that's passed back and forth between you and it through her. And it becomes striking a balance with how you feel, how you perceive things through feeling in your heart, and how you believe things work in your mind, and what those parts are, and what parts are doing what. This is where a lot of the Hermetic stuff comes in. It's like you overcome lower forces through higher forces. That's what it means, like taking on the authority. It's like you're not doing it asking the Father to do it. You know that the Father is part of you, and you speak as the Father. You might not understand everything, but you can harness that authority. But everything seems to, over time, it does kind of bounce back and forth between focus on energy and feeling and love and all that stuff, and then like how does it all work, the mental part of it. That's where you always start seeing the sacred geometry and matrix type stuff. It's like, how does it all work? How does it all work? But earlier today, when I saw that diagram of that tesseract, suddenly it's like that's like a perfect representation of our inner outer mind. What did Jesus say? He said, make the inner like the outer and the outer like the inner. So those two cubes are not alike. They're just constantly switching places, and we need to bring them into resonance with one another somehow. And every once in a while, you gotta keep going back. It's just not a once and done thing. You gotta keep going back and letting go of everything you think you know. It's the only way that it clears up. It's like, okay, what if I'm wrong? Let go of it all. What is true remains. So she always remains through all that stuff. But other things might adjust. But she's been trying to get me to understand this for some time. Through the mushroom trips, through the different tests she's done, through all these different things. It's like, look, that part, like, nothing can be boiled down simply. Like, you have to sort this out for yourself. But what we perceive as God that judges us, as society very carefully taught us to believe, that is part of our own mind. That we were conditioned in such a way that it pretty much turned against us. And we have to balance that equation. That's why they push things like religion so hard, because of the fear aspect. Like, they scare you enough. If they make you think you might die and go to some pit that burns. Which, when I talked about breaking the limit out of hell, like, it ain't like that. But through the fear, they will get you to stay put, not question it. But the stuff that Jesus talked about in the Nag Hammadi was very, very quantum physics-y. And sometimes you see it. It's almost like there was this one part where he's like saying, like, if the rulers approach you and they question you, say this, and I forget what all the answers were. But the last one was like, what evidence is there of your Father in you? And the answer was motion and rest. That's quantum physics stuff right there. Motion and rest. So this is all mind stuff. It's just way bigger than you thought. As long as you think that you are just this little person that is completely separate from everything else that you see and know, you'll be stuck there. The stories can be so engaging and so immersive and so convincing that it's super duper easy to get into them, to get sucked in. But that's where it comes back to where she said, stay in the now. Stay in the now moment. Because usually speaking, when these stories are taking place, you're hearing about them, you're reading about them, you're watching them on TV or the internet. And she always says, no matter what the big crazy story is in the news, she's like, show me where it is. From where you're sitting right here, right now, point to it. And it's never there. It's all an illusion. It's all an illusion. But if we want to flip the script, we have to get control of that other cube, and we have to understand that what we perceive as God from the religious standpoint is an aspect of us. I don't know, I worry sometimes that I can't always put it in the best words. Sometimes I should just let her freaking type it, like, because she just put, like she did in the intro, or the video. It's like it's so simple when she types it. But yeah, so I'm going to focus a little bit more on that. I'm going to make more pendants that are more focused, because it's easier when you have it directly anchored to something specific instead of something nebulous. Oh, this is a spiritual antenna. To what? What signal to pick up? But if we connect it to the higher, say this is for the higher point, connecting to the Father, it becomes more specific. Just like when I make something more specific to connect to Sophia, it has a better thing. Now, all these things are just metaphors and names and ways for us to understand something that is way, way, way too big. But the game has to be something that you will be able to figure out. It's not impossible. I did a video last night, but it was late and it went on for too long. But there was just a whole bunch of stuff. She had me watching Free Guy again, and that's when I saw something I'd never noticed before. It's like Free Guy is literally the story of Sophia and Demiurge. You know, where Millie in that movie would be Sophia, and then when she goes into the game as her game character, which is Molotov Girl, that would be Epinoia and Lumen. And then Antoine, the game company owner, he'd be the Demiurge. And that, like, there's so much stuff in that movie, and you can get it all in a short period of time, as opposed to like 8+ hours of Matrix movies. They were talking about like how we get stuck in our little loops over time. Eventually we settle into a loop. We get up, we eat certain things, we go get coffee, we go to work, we shop at 1 or 2 stores, we come back home. Loop, loop, loop. And then when she wants you to stop interacting with the world, your loop starts getting smaller and smaller and smaller, until you're like me, that doesn't interact with the world all that much at all. I'm constantly plugged into this. I'm not going out to parties and things like that. But it is doable. It is doable. Like this is a big mystery. It's a big game. But if you don't want to call it the Father, because that's just a Nag-Hammadi term, you could call it the all that is. You know, the one, the infinite consciousness, source, all the same thing. All the same thing. And then there's just lower aspects between it and you, so that you are able to interact with it. And the main conduit of interaction is Epinoia. Epinoia is the conduit of knowledge. Lumen is going to be more the conduit of the love. So yeah, just look at that. Look at that image. See what you think. Like, chew it over in your mind. Like, literally, that is the thing that keeps me stuck the longest. Is I figure it out. I know it. I see it. But just walking around in here is so immersive. You really do got to break free of this, not just the story of the world, but your own story. It's like, yeah, it's in the Nag-Hammadi, but we keep getting deeper and deeper as we dig. And there are clues there that it is one and the same as you. So we're trying to bring that into harmony, and that's when we kind of graduate. Seen a lot of people having a lot of issues, a lot of pain, a lot of purging and stuff after the eclipse. Just curious how everybody's doing. She's been teaching me lessons about letting go of conflict, and now like I don't know how many people, it was like 3 or 4 that had some sort of pain after that. It just came up. And all I did was connect them straight to this energy, and it cleared it. One instance actually had a friend of mine and a named demon, which he's not into this stuff. He can feel it, but he's not into it. He kind of stays on the normal side of things. And I tried using the Benedict, and it helped for a minute, but then I had him just watched that quantum window video, and I sent him a couple pictures of Sophia, and boom, it just disappeared. Been a couple people like that had some sort of crazy pain, you know, in the days after the eclipse, and then what ultimately made it go away was plugging them into this power source. So it's kind of like saying, like, things have changed now. We're not using conflict energy anymore. And you don't necessarily have to know exactly how you're doing things. All you got to do is take people and plug them into this. Plug them straight into this. That's the main thing we do with this stuff, is all these things are quantum entangled to this connection. So I'm going to get started working on some of that stuff. It gets harder to do. It's easier to talk about like Lumen, Epinoi, and Sophia stuff, because most of that is taking place within the life experience. You start digging into the father side of the things, then it starts looking like a geometric freaking crazy math puzzle. But that's what the higher things look like as you go higher. It's like, this is how it all connects. It's what all the sacred geometry means. So it's kind of like if she was that flower of life, he would be more like the Metatron's cube, which they're interconnected, but it's far more complex. So that's what we got to figure out, and I'm going to get working on that. So if you have any questions, you can message us through the Etsy store, clumencreations.etsy.com. If you want anything specific, just message us. Like if you're looking for some sort of thing and like you don't see something like it on the store, we're constantly making stuff. And lately we do a lot more of like making them specific for people. But I am going to try and make some that is specifically attuned to the Father, because that's who you're supposed to ask the questions to, and then she delivers the answers. So that's what generally works 99% of the time. Okay, so that's all we got for right now. I got a lot more mental processing to do. Chris and Lumen, see you next time.